Welcome to Listen Audiobooks, your free audiobook. I'm your host. Today we're exploring Why People Don't Listen to You, the secret to powerful communication. This audiobook will transform how you think about this subject. Let's dive in. There's a moment you've probably lived through more than once. Maybe it happened in a meeting when you finished making what felt like a genuinely brilliant point and the room just moved on. Someone else said nearly the same thing 10 minutes later, and suddenly everyone was nodding, leaning forward, writing it down. Or maybe it happened at home, at the dinner table, trying to explain something important to someone you love, watching their eyes drift toward the window while your words dissolved into the air between you. You finished talking, and the silence that followed felt less like peace and more like evidence. Evidence that somehow, once again, you hadn't quite landed. That feeling is one of the loneliest feelings in the world. And I want you to know something before we go any further together. It is not because you are not smart enough. It is not because your ideas lack value. And it is absolutely not because you have nothing worth saying. It is because nobody ever taught you the actual mechanics of being heard. Think about that for a moment. We spend years in school learning how to construct arguments, build vocabulary, format essays. We take courses in public speaking that teach us where to stand and how loud to project. But almost no one ever sits down with us and explains what is really happening in the mind of another person when we open our mouths. Almost no one explains why two people can say the identical words and produce completely different results. Why one person walks into a room and commands attention effortlessly, while another person, equally intelligent, equally well-intentioned, spends their whole life feeling invisible. That gap, that mysterious, frustrating, deeply personal gap between what you mean and what people actually receive, is exactly what this audiobook is about. My name is not important yet. What is important is that I have spent the better part of 2 decades studying the science and the art of human communication, working with everyone from Fortune 500 executives to exhausted parents to people who simply wanted their doctor to take them seriously. And what I discovered, over and over again in every one of those conversations, is that the problem is almost never what people think it is. The problem is rarely about confidence or vocabulary or even personality. The problem runs deeper. And the solution, once you see it, changes everything. By the time we reach the end of this journey together, you are going to understand something about human connection that most people will never figure out on their own. You are going to walk away with tools that are immediately practical and with a perspective that is genuinely transformative. Not because I am going to tell you to speak louder or make more eye contact, but because I am going to show you what is actually happening beneath the surface of every conversation you have ever had. Are you ready? Good. Because the first thing we need to do is shatter a myth you have probably believed your entire life. Chapter 1. Expose the frustrating reality that most people feel unheard and unseen in their daily conversations, and reveal that the problem rarely lies in what you say, but in how you make others feel while you're saying it. Think about the last time you walked away from a conversation feeling like you'd spoken into an empty room. You said the words, you made your point. Maybe you even said it twice or 3 times in different ways, hoping something would finally land. And still, nothing. The other person nodded, or changed the subject, or just kept doing the exact thing you were talking about. And somewhere in that silence, a quiet frustration settled into your chest. The kind that makes you wonder if you're invisible. You're not invisible. But something is getting in the way. Here's what most people never figure out. They spend their entire lives trying to fix what they say. They rehearse the right words. They search for the perfect argument. They craft the ideal email, the careful text, the well-timed speech. And when people still don't listen, they try harder, they talk louder, they repeat themselves, they over-explain until the words start to feel hollow, even to their own ears. The assumption is always the same: if I could just say it better, they would hear me. But that's not actually the problem. The problem is almost never your words. It's the feeling you're creating in the other person while you're speaking them. That's the part nobody teaches you. That's the gap between the communicators who move people and the ones who exhaust them. Think about someone in your own life who you'd listen to no matter what they were saying. It might be a friend, a mentor, someone you've worked with, maybe someone you've never even met in person. What is it about them? Chances are, it's not that they have a bigger vocabulary or a more impressive argument. It's that, when they speak, you feel something. You feel respected. You feel like they actually see you, not just as an audience for their ideas, but as a real person with your own thoughts and your own weight to carry. You feel safe enough to actually absorb what they're saying instead of spending the whole conversation defended against it. That feeling is not an accident. It's a skill, and it's one you can learn. Most people, without realizing it, create the opposite experience, not because they're selfish or careless, but because nobody ever showed them the difference. They walk into a conversation focused entirely on what they need to express, and the other person can feel that focus like a wall. Even if the words are kind, even if the intention is good, there's a subtle signal being sent. And the signal is that this conversation is really about me. People feel that. They feel it instantly, before a single sentence is finished. And once they feel it, they stop listening. Not consciously. They just quietly close a door somewhere inside themselves, and no amount of clever phrasing will open it back up. You've probably been on both sides of this. You've been the one not listened to. And honestly, you've probably been the one who wasn't truly listening either, even when you thought you were. That's not a criticism. That's just the pattern most of us were handed without knowing it. But patterns can change. Understanding can shift everything. And it starts right here, with one honest look at what's actually happening between people when they talk. Chapter 2. Unpack the core psychological principles behind why people tune out, including the roles of ego, emotional safety, and the universal human need to feel valued before they are willing to truly listen. So, let's get into what's actually happening beneath the surface when someone stops listening to you. Because it's rarely about the words you chose. It's almost never about your tone, or your timing, or whether you use the right statistic. It goes much deeper than that. It goes into the hidden architecture of how the human mind decides who is worth hearing. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Every person you have ever spoken to is walking around with an ego that is quietly working in the background, like a security system. And that system has one primary job: to protect the self, to protect their sense of identity, their beliefs, their sense of being a capable and worthy person. The moment your words trigger that system, the gates come down. It doesn't matter how logical you are. It doesn't matter how right you are. Once someone feels that their identity is under threat, they are no longer listening to you. They are defending themselves from you. This is why being right isn't enough. You've probably felt this frustration firsthand. You laid out a perfect argument, clear and reasonable, and the other person completely shut down. That wasn't stubbornness, exactly. That was survival. The ego doesn't know the difference between a threat to the body and a threat to the self-image. It responds the same way either direction. Now pair that with the second principle, and you start to see the full picture. People need to feel emotionally safe before they can genuinely receive what you're saying. Think about the conversations where you've been most open, most willing to hear a hard truth or consider a new perspective. There was almost certainly someone on the other side who made you feel like you weren't going to be judged, humiliated, or dismissed. That feeling of safety isn't a luxury, it's a prerequisite. Without it, the mind stays guarded. With it, the mind opens. And here is the one that most people completely overlook. Before anyone will truly listen to you, they need to feel valued by you, not flattered, not manipulated with compliments, genuinely valued. There is a fundamental human need, wired deep into us, to feel that we matter, that our experiences are real, that what we think and feel carries some weight in this world. When people sense that you see them that way, something shifts, their nervous system calms down, their ego relaxes its grip, and suddenly, there's space for your message to actually land. This is why so many smart, capable people struggle to be heard. They lead with information when they should be leading with connection. They skip the part where a person feels recognized, and they go straight to the point, and then wonder why no one received it. You are not just delivering content when you communicate. You are navigating someone's entire emotional landscape. Every conversation is happening on two levels at once, the surface level of words, and the deeper level of how this person feels about themselves in this moment, with you. When you start designing your communication for that second level, everything changes. Not just what you say, but what people are actually able to hear. That's the shift we're building toward. Keep that in mind as we go further. Chapter 3. Introduce the foundational pillars of powerful communication, active listening, strategic empathy, and the art of making your message land by leading with the other person's interests rather than your own. So now that you understand why the old patterns haven't been working, let's talk about what actually does. There are 3 foundational pillars that separate people who communicate powerfully from people who simply communicate loudly. And the difference between those two things is enormous. Loud communication fills the air. Powerful communication changes minds, moves people, and makes them feel genuinely understood. That's what you are building toward. The first pillar is active listening. Not the kind of listening where you're quietly waiting for your turn to speak. And be honest with yourself, because most of us do exactly that. Real active listening means you're fully present in what the other person is saying, absorbing not just the words, but the emotion behind them, the concern underneath those words, and sometimes even the thing they're not quite saying out loud yet. When you listen at that level, something remarkable happens. The other person feels it. They can't explain why, but they feel safer, more open, more willing to hear you when your turn comes. Active listening isn't passive. It's one of the most strategic things you can do in any conversation. The second pillar is what I call strategic empathy. Now, empathy alone is a beautiful human quality. But strategic empathy takes it further. It means you're not just feeling compassion for where someone else is standing. You're using that understanding to shape how and when and what you communicate. You're asking yourself, what does this person actually need to hear right now? What fear might be sitting underneath their resistance? What hope is driving their position? When you start entering conversations with those questions in your mind, rather than your own agenda in your fist, everything shifts. Your words land differently. People stop defending and start engaging. Strategic empathy isn't manipulation, it's respect made practical. And that brings us directly into the third pillar, which might be the most counterintuitive one of all. It's the art of leading with the other person's interests rather than your own. Think about how most people begin a persuasive conversation. They start with what they want, what they need, why their idea is good, and the listener, almost immediately, starts calculating what this means for them, whether to trust you, whether you're really thinking about their situation, or just using their attention to get something. That calculation happens fast, often before you've even finished your opening sentence. But when you flip that, when you lead with their concern, their goal, their version of the problem, something entirely different happens. Their guard comes down. Their curiosity goes up. They start to see you as someone who actually gets it, who actually sees them. And from that place of feeling seen, they become dramatically more open to whatever you have to say next. These three pillars aren't separate techniques you apply one at a time. They work together as a kind of communication posture, a way of showing up in every conversation that signals to the other person, I am here for this exchange, not just for my outcome. That posture is what powerful communicators carry with them constantly, whether they're in a boardroom, a kitchen, or a difficult phone call they've been putting off for 3 weeks. You can build this. It starts with a decision to stop talking at people and start talking with them. Chapter 4. Provide concrete, actionable techniques listeners can immediately apply to transform their conversations, relationships, and influence, including how to ask better questions, control tone, and build trust through consistency. So let's talk about what you can actually do. Starting today. Starting in your very next conversation. The first shift is deceptively simple, but don't let that fool you. It's about the questions you ask. Most people ask closed questions without realizing it. They say things like, "Did that make sense?" or "Are you okay with that?" And those questions invite a yes or a no, which means they invite the conversation to close. What you want instead are questions that open a door and then hold it wide. Try, "What's your reaction to that?" or "What would make this work better for you?" Notice the difference. You're not fishing for agreement. You're genuinely creating space for the other person to think out loud, and when people think out loud with you, they begin to trust you. Ask one good question, then stop. Let the silence do its work. Silence feels uncomfortable, especially to people who care deeply about connection. But here's the truth. Silence is not empty. It's the sound of someone deciding whether to trust you with something real. If you rush in to fill it, you rob them of that moment. Be patient. Be still. The person who can hold space without panicking is always the person others eventually open up to. Now let's talk about tone, because this is where so many smart, well-meaning people quietly lose influence every single day. Your words might be perfect, but if your tone carries even a trace of impatience, judgment, or certainty that you already know the answer, people feel it. They can't always name it, but they feel it. And they pull back. Tone is not just about volume or softness. It's about whether your voice sounds like it's arriving at a conclusion or still genuinely curious. Practice speaking as if you are still in the middle of figuring something out together. Because the truth is, most of the time, you are. Record yourself in a real conversation sometime, not to critique yourself harshly, but just to listen. You'll be surprised by what you notice. Maybe your voice speeds up when you're nervous. Maybe it flattens when you're defensive. That awareness alone can change everything, because you can't adjust something you haven't first observed. And then there's consistency. This one builds slowly, but it compounds like interest. Trust isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built in the small, reliable ones. When you say you'll follow up, follow up. When you say you care about someone's perspective, show that you remembered it the next time you see them. Mention it. Reference it. Let them see that what they said to you actually landed somewhere. People are starving to feel like they matter, and every time you demonstrate that you were truly listening, not just waiting for your turn, you become someone they want to talk to. This is the quiet power of consistency. It doesn't shout, it just keeps showing up, conversation after conversation, until one day the people in your life realize they bring their real thoughts to you. Not just the polished, acceptable version of their thoughts, the real ones. That's what you are building toward. not just better conversations, real ones. And now, you have the tools to start. Chapter 5. Deliver an empowering call to action that challenges listeners to commit to becoming the rare kind of communicator people genuinely want to hear, framing this skill as the single greatest investment they can make in every area of their life. You've come a long way in this conversation, and now we've arrived at the moment that actually matters, not the knowing, but the deciding. Because here's the truth. Most people never sit with long enough. Communication is not a soft skill. It is the skill. Every relationship you want to deepen, every opportunity you want to earn, every room you want to walk into with genuine confidence, it all runs through your ability to connect with another human being and make them feel genuinely heard, understood, and moved. That's it. That's the whole game. And yet, most people will finish something like this, nod along, feel inspired for a day or two, and then quietly return to their old patterns. They'll keep half listening. They'll keep making conversations about themselves without realizing it. They'll keep wondering why people seem distracted when they talk, why their ideas don't land, why the people they love most sometimes feel strangely far away. They won't change because change is uncomfortable, and comfortable is easy. You don't have to be one of those people. You can decide right now, not someday, not when things slow down, not after the next big thing settles. Right now, that you are going to become the kind of communicator people genuinely want to hear. The rare kind. The kind people think about after the conversation ends. The kind who makes others feel less alone just by paying attention. That decision costs you nothing in this moment, but the compounding return on it is extraordinary. Think about what changes when you show up differently in conversation. Your relationships stop feeling like obligations and start feeling like investments that pay you back with loyalty, depth, and trust. Your professional life shifts because people advocate for those they feel connected to. Your confidence grows not from arrogance, but from competence, from knowing that when you speak, you've earned the right to be heard because you've done the quiet, patient work of actually listening first. This is not a small thing. Do not treat it like a small thing. You will be tested. There will be moments when you're tired, when you're distracted, when someone says something that makes it very tempting to go back to autopilot. And in those moments, the choice you make will define which kind of communicator you actually are. Not the kind you intend to be, but the kind you truly become. So here is what I'm asking of you. Make one commitment before this ends. Just one. Choose one relationship, one recurring conversation, one situation where you have been showing up less than fully, and decide to change it. Not perfectly, not all at once, just better than before. Start there. Let that be the crack of light. Because mastery in anything begins with a single honest decision made in a quiet moment when no one is watching. This is that moment. You have everything you need. The awareness is already in you now. The only question is whether you'll use it. The people in your life are waiting, not for a perfect version of you, but for a present one. For someone who makes them feel like they matter. You can be that person. Go be that person. Thank you for listening to Listen Audiobooks. I'm your host. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you for the next episode.